The latest, I got some interesting questions last night from some people that I've talked to.
Okay.
And one of the questions, of course, is a typical one. Gentleman, I'll just give his first name, Tommy. He's probably listening. Apparently he's a gold bug, he says, and he has a background in one of the top law schools and understands the Federal Exchange Commission and all this stuff. He's been a long-time listener to the program. He said it's really helped him on a physical and spiritual level. And his question was an interesting one, because he said he's been a gold bug. He's bought and sold and made lots of money on buying and selling gold. And, of course, so is our sponsor, upline of us and downline of you, which is Ted Anderson, who owns Midas Resources and Genesis Network. And now, of course, Ted still buys and sells gold, and I will probably still buy gold itself. But I think the best gold is Carrot Bar's gold, because it's a value-added replacement economy. It's not just like alternative energy or an alternative economy where, hey, I can buy this collectible. Let's say I buy a collectible, a piece of furniture or an artwork. That has value. Even the numismatic coins have value, but you have to have a specific buyer. The question was, if I buy Carrot Bars today, let's say a gram, and I want to sell it next week because my daughter needs something done, how much money are they going to get for the Carrot Bars? And of course, to me, it's not to buy and sell to use as a form of exchange right now. It's a gold saving club. So it's not something that you buy and then sell. Well, so if you bought a gram at, say, $53 Carrot Bar right now for a gram, of course, you can buy it from a broker for $35 for gold, but it's not LBMA certified, so it doesn't mean it actually has that value. So you're not going to get $35. You'll probably get like $27 or $25 for a gram of gold.
Yep.
What would you get for reselling back to Carrot Bars that Carrot Bar gram?
I'd have to actually look. It changes on a day-to-day basis with the London fix, but Carrot Bar is actually willing to buy it back from you, which is a big deal. And actually, right now, the buyback price in euro is 34.13. Let's see what that is in dollars. That's 39.01.
Right. So you'd lose quite a bit if you just bought it one week and sold it the next in terms of value.
There's no intention. The people that buy Carrot Bar, they're not buying this as a paper profit investment tool. And then when you're looking at the price like that, it's some people tend to lose focus on what the value of gold is. And
exactly. And the other thing I mentioned to him is that we're moving toward a gold currency system, which is not just gold that's in a bank. Like the big bank in New York started earlier this year to store gold and silver in Texas, and they actually sent a notice to the federal government that the Federal Exchange Commission cannot invade or seize their gold because the federal government basically is on the verge of they've accepted a policy of bailing in, which means they're going to steal people's deposits in the banks as they keep on printing trillions of dollars. I was looking through a list of firsts of Obama, which, this guy should have been impeached 6 years ago. But one of the firsts is that he has crossed the realm of the $20 trillion debt for the United States. The only way to deal with that debt is to blow it up. It's almost like if you're coming across a big mountain and you want to put a railway through it, you can dig at it with shovels, but you might be there for 1,000 years. You got to use dynamite and high explosives, which means you're going to blow it up. That means your value of your money in the bank is going to go poof. Just like they call it a haircut. They have all these fancy terms in Europe. What they are offering the Greek people, if they didn't get this deal with the European Central Bank, was any deposits over 10,000 euros were going to be shaved at 30% off the top. Then it's only the first haircut. So I tell people, firstly, toward the end of the year, when vendors start accepting Carrot Bar currency, it won't be getting devalued as if you're going back and trying to sell the gold in the Carrot Bar. You're going to get value at current levels. In other words, if it's 53 euros, for example, or 52 euros, which is like $55, I think it is, U.S., for a Carrot Bar gram, when airlines start accepting it or vendors start accepting Carrot Bar currency, they're going to accept it at the Carrot Bar value, not a reduced value, which means once it transitions next year to a Carrot Bar currency, we actually have currency notes and you're going to have other things available, and eventually bartering, it will have its full value, which is a currency. It'll be a currency itself, a separate currency. in many ways like Bitcoin, only it's not backed by number crunching, it's backed by gold actually in the physical unit that's vaulted gold. In the currency notes, electronic transfers of actual gold that's in a vault, so it can't be multiplied or created out of nothing, just like the fractional reserve. So does that kind of answer the question, or do you think you can expand on that?
I think I can expand on that just a little bit. Number one, people need to keep in mind that they're not getting into Carrot Bars to make paper profits. I mean, paper is worthless. It's intrinsically worthless. Yeah, you can make paper profits in gold as a gold bug, so to speak, over the course of time, and more power to you if you can do that. But that's not what gold is for. Gold is for actual money. And we were covering the difference between currency and gold on the show last Tuesday, as a matter of fact. And the people need to keep in mind that gold, I mean, it's absurd to price gold in terms of paper currency. It's absolutely absurd.
You use that analogy that in 1922, we said this, I think, a few weeks ago, a gram of gold was the same as $1. Which is, 30 grams in an ounce. But 1 gram is $1, and $1 would buy you 20 loaves of bread, and 1 gram of gold would buy you 20 loaves of bread in 1922. $1 today will buy you a third of a loaf of bread, and a gram of gold will still buy you 20 loaves of bread. So value, you don't lose value. So it's kind of fallacious to balance it. And when we see the price of gold, the physical gold, going up in terms of delivery of physical gold, it actually, they have to pay a premium to deliver it in China, Russia, and other countries, higher than the current, quote, selling price, because the powers that be that set the gold price are actually forcing the paper price of gold down when they actually can't back it because they don't have it in their vaults. And they're trying to shove it down while they're trying to acquire physical gold like crazy, which is why the COMEX, we mentioned last week, got emptied. In other words, a lot of the vaults that have gold have been emptied, haven't they? That's
right. That's right, exactly. Just to clarify a little bit, too, there is just an article posted on a Skype chat room regarding Carrot Bars, and they're talking about the price versus the value, and especially in America. The rest of the world looks at Americans and just considers us foolish in terms of our knowledge on gold and the value of gold. They are more than willing to get as much gold as they can. They're saving 5 to 10% in most Western countries like Germany, whereas in the U.S. Their actual savings is actually negative 2.5%. I mean, we are consistently going broke, not just as a nation, but on a personal level. And part of that's because people have been so dumbed down by the educational system that they even those with some knowledge treat gold as a way to profit with paper currency, and that's not what it's for. It's meant to be a store of wealth, and a long-term store of wealth, and not just a quick buck.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so when people commit to a gram of gold a month, and over a period of a year, they're going to acquire a gram every month. They're acquiring, number one, Carrot Bar LBMA certified vaulted gold, but number two, as it transitions, I think is it scheduled by the main corporation in Stuttgart, Germany, to go to a Carrot Bar note. It's actually going to be physical notes as well as the Carrot Bar cards, and vendors will start taking it electronically as payment, like for airline tickets or groceries or hardware or whatever. They will accept Carrot Bar currencies as currency early next year.
That's correct.
Back in just a moment on the program, even for Cameo, because he's a very busy guy, to talk about this, because he saw the vision right away of Carrot Bars, which is why he got involved with it, and of course he's your downline. And people need to understand the reason why is Ted still buys and sells gold, and I think gold's a good investment, but it's a different beast than Carrot Bars, because Carrot Bars is going to come in stages. Number one, it's a gold savings account, so anybody can buy a gram or 2.5 or 5 grams of gold, even on a regular basis, and start saving. Number two, it's going to retain value. So in other words, when it transitions to where vendors start accepting carrot bar as currency, it's going to be at or very close to the actual cost of getting the carrot bars. And then when it's set up as a bartering unit, it will retain its full costing, because part of the arrangements I want to, when we set up our app, is that carrot bars will be a yardstick for buying and selling services and goods. And it will be basically, we call zero equivalent to the current dollar value and euro value or whatever currency you're using as a standard, because it'll be acceptable in any country and convertible. The key issue is that currencies eventually are going to start sliding, but the carrot bar value won't. So that if you're a vendor and you decide, hey, I'm going to start accepting carrot bar currency, and a year or two from now the euro dollar is devalued by 20%, the vendor is still going to get paid the carrot bar currency, which means they're going to make a profit by still accepting the carrot bar currency as the payment for their service or goods.
That's correct. And, you know, we were talking during the commercial break there, and
okay. We have G. Edward Griffith popping in too, so we're just going to continue this line for a moment and then get G. Edward's opinion.
So, you know, what I'm trying to point out is that we don't need to fear what the paper price is of the carrot bars currency, the buyback price, because what I envision is carrot bars is going to have a policy where most of the vendors and merchants that come on board will have a stable gold price. It doesn't matter what the paper price is. You know, you might have a shoe store that's selling a pair of shoes for exactly $65, and you might have a parallel purchase point in gold that says this is going to be exactly 1 gram. And next year, because of inflation, that pair of shoes is $75. Well, the carrot bar's price is still 1 gram. It hasn't changed. The gold still buys the exact same amount of goods that it did last year.
Right. So in other words, it's going to allow some market stability. And the other thing that I see, and I want to kind of put out this idea that I talked about last time and expanded a bit, and then get G. Edward's opinion. There's a number of competing financial systems, and we have to have an open market to see which ones succeed. In the past, there were all kinds of systems. There was bartering. You buy so many sheep and cows, and they would exchange them, and cattle and camels, whatever, back thousands of years ago. They had a tally stick system through Norway and Europe and so on for many, many centuries. Gold and silver coins, etc. Out west here, when the gold struck, they actually would have bags of gold dust and put in scales, and they'd have someone certify it with so much gold nuggets or dust or whatever in order to buy so much feed for your cattle or other things that they would need in order to run their farms. What carrot bars does is a couple of things that are really unique. And of course, this is why we have the rise of things like Bitcoin and now 11 other cryptocurrencies that are based on mining the numbers. Okay, and of course, we know that numbers are mined on prime numbers. And I've talked to Professor McCanney, and he's actually shown in his book that prime numbers are in groupings. And with a small laptop, you can break the code of Bitcoin or any other encrypted system that's using mined prime numbers, either for security or encryption or for a cryptocurrency. So number one, the cryptocurrencies are not secure. I got to tell people that. They need to understand that. Number two, you need something that is a yardstick for bartering, because we need an economy and economies that are based on credit, not debt. The thing that drives wars in the last, say, 2.5 centuries, since the Napoleonic Wars, has always been bankers driving debt and funding both sides, because his largest debt instrument is war. And what we want to have is a system where people employ themselves. So if a dentist, let's say, deposits 2,000 points of dental care, and each dental procedure is worth so many points, and those points can convert to so many grams of gold, the same procedure will cost the same this year or next year. You can rate the seller and the buyer in a virtual network, just like eBay or Uber Taxi, where it rates the driver and it rates the passenger both, so that the driver, the person that's posting up, hey, I can provide so many hours of babysitting or so many hours of dental care or whatever, they can then obtain credit to purchase other goods on the network using the yardstick of carrot bars. So what I envision, and I've talked to Professor McCanney in the last few days again, we are working on trying to collaborate with other, let's say, companies and peoples that are going to develop other technologies, so you'll have, in a sense, mobile kiosks or banks, but we're also going to have encrypted phone apps, computer apps, and so on that will allow you to do bank exchanges, exchange for fractional reserve currency, get actual physical gold or gold notes, the Carrot Bar notes, barter, actually deposit, in a sense, your barterable goods, services, or intellectual property, or ebooks, or whatever, just like Amazon. In other words, we may even pair up with corporations like Amazon, where they can start accepting Carrot Bars, and you can actually become. I am already an Amazon vendor, although I haven't posted any current products. I had a couple that I was looking at a few years ago. You could post up products. You could sell crafts. And if you're at home and you're a single mother or you have a small business on the side, you can make a craft and sell it in Carrot Bar currency. You can even have a Facebook page up for Carrot Bar. So where I think it's going is people need to have alternative sources of income that are stable, that can't be blown up by governments, that literally are re-electing themselves through debt expansion, like Obama. He's a perfect example, the $20 trillion president. And a number of presidencies, going right back to John F. Kennedy, that have blown the debt up in the United States. Now we don't even have the money to fix the bridge on the number 10 highway coming out of California that's now causing us to lose 1% of our GDP per week, I think it is, caused by the loss of traffic coming from the port of Los Angeles to the United States, central United States. So they have to go through other ports. This is an example of completely mismanagement and the fact that debt-based economies always result in destroying people, destroying the middle class, and eventually resulting in war and revolution. And if we don't have a credit-based economy where a nation or an island can get credit based on goods and services they can produce, and people can't become, in a sense, their own self-employer by depositing ability to provide a service, our economy is going to crash and burn because the velocity of money's dropped. The Baltic Dry Index is the lowest in 50-plus years. Where I see that going is a total catastrophe, and I expect the first, what I call birth pang of this, to hit really hard this fall. So I want to hear G. Edwards' comment on that, because I have a feeling Bitcoin, it's my theory, Bitcoin has a lot of what I call the formulae that if it's done properly in the stages of, right now a gold savings account, number two, a gold note system and gold vendors that accept it as currency to pay for services and goods like airline tickets or shoes or whatever, and thirdly, electronic bartering where we have a credit-based economy. So when we come back, we'll hear from G. Edward Griffin. Pete Fedek is here. If you have questions on any of these topics, 800-259-5791. Edward Griffin's comment, because Pete's laid out in the last few weeks, and Pete Fedek from Carrot Bars is on every Tuesday and Thursday, first hour now for the next while, to explain Carrot Bars and explain how this transition from a gold savings system, which is what Carrot Bars is now, to the end of the year, Carrot Bar currency and vendors, and when this transition happens eventually to things like Carrot Bar bartering, it's going to be much more powerful than any other system out there, including the fractional reserve currencies now, credit cards, debit cards, or Bitcoin and so on, which are basically not as secure as people think because of technologies such as Professor McKinney has proven can be broken. And this is one of the things the government is, like the Federal Reserve is talking about, getting rid of getting rid of physical cash. Now, they've talked about it for years, but I think they're ready to do it now. When Janet Yellen says she's going to actually raise the interest rate, the only way she can do it, and she said this publicly, is to get rid of physical cash, and I think it's coming.
Well, I guess I don't know where I jump into that. That's quite a...
Well, I guess again, the question is, let's give an analysis. We see, you mentioned, again, your mantra, and you mentioned this last time and then today on the break, is we need a competitive system of different currencies other than the fractional reserve notes that the government's put forward.
Yeah, I think that's the key to all of this, because we're dealing with a combination of theory, and to some extent some of these concepts have never been tried before, the emerging technologies, and although we think we got it all figured out, new things come along, and all of a sudden a system which we thought was absolutely unbreakable, we find out, oh, it can be hacked after all.
Yeah.
Well, that changes a lot. And then we think in terms of, well, one system, we're talking about Bitcoin now here and other cryptocurrencies, where that, there's a limit as to how much of the monetary units that can be created. It's an absolute limit. But then we find out, a couple of years down the line, well, when you reach that limit, you just start with a new system and create another one. And so now we got double the amount. Yes, they're not all the same, but now people are using two of them instead of one. And so we learn as we go, and that doesn't mean that it's a negative judgment on any of them. It's just that as we develop new technologies, we find out that they develop differently than we thought they would. So we have to be free to choose and not nail anything and say this is what it's going to be, by golly, forevermore. If freedom to choose is the most powerful force, I think, in the universe. And so that brings up the issue that when we talk about what we should be doing in terms of currencies and how to make the monetary system better, we tend to talk as though we're in an ivory tower, and we're talking theoretically. Well, it would be better if it were this. Or no, it'd be better if it were that. And that's good. That kind of exchange is necessary, and that thinking is necessary. But there's a tendency to forget the fact that down there on the ground, there are forces that are opposing any reform. It's not just that we're free to do whatever we want. If we don't take into account into the formula that there are governments and there are banks and there are existing institutions that are thriving on the present system, and they will do everything possible to oppose any substantial change. If we don't take that into consideration, then we've made another one of those mistakes. And to be specific, what I'm thinking of is that we can talk about, well, we should have this form of currency, it should be that or whatever, but we don't want to face the fact that, hey, governments as powerful as they are today can simply say, hey, people who do that are terrorists. People who do that are unpatriotic, and therefore we will pass a law and make it illegal. Wow! Yeah. Now all of a sudden we're down out of the ivory tower, and we have to take attention.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the reason why. Let me explain a couple things that I know, because I had security clearance and worked with guys that were, and I have a background in advanced computing. The real two issues that the government has to control, all governments, are media and money, period. Everything else is basically secondary. Even the laws, which are basically in every country, are administrative. The true operation of a legal system where we're sovereigns is long gone. I mean, we have administrative law pretending to be the operation of real law. Just even the selection of juries, the way law is prosecuted, the way laws are now being formed by Supreme Courts, which have no right to actually make laws, which they're doing daily. So what we really have to say is power can only be projected through two issues, media and money. Now, if tomorrow Obama, who has a kill switch to the internet, because right now the big danger to the main media is alternative media. Now, this program, which I've done on Genesis, is now number 3 on Genesis Network, and our show audience is bigger than any of the network television shows daily. Okay, we do 15 hours of programming. I'm also on other networks as a guest, like Rents Network, second hour, the first to the fourth Thursdays. So we have huge audience, millions worldwide. Now, what happens is if they took it off, I have my computer friends, we would have a peer-to-peer encrypted network that no government on earth could hack into or block. That's number one. Number two, we have ways of creating electronic bartering so no government on earth could hack in or block. And they're terrified of this. In fact, they try to make it, quote, illegal. But how can they make it illegal when you mirror images on computer networks around the world that aren't even in your country? So governments and the transnational corporations are in a terror state because they realize the very technology they want to use to hang the populations of Earth and suppress us and control us are about to hang them. And part of it is their own greed, because they created not only they created the circumstances of debt, but they created, even the Arab Spring Revolution was created by the debt crisis they swung over the Arab people, so they were starving to death. Then they did geoengineering of the climate if you go to all of these countries where the revolution is rising, it's where drought has happened because of geoengineering of the climate. And then on top of that, people are pretty clever. Any system that the governments or people can create to try to crush us we're going to create something to get around it. I had friends inside the NSA, the Storage Tech, Lucent Technologies, Lockheed Martin. They were doing cloud computing in encrypted systems that were completely unbreakable by the NSA. That's 20 years ago. So what I have to do is a warning to government and a warning to anybody in the globalists, and this is why we have people like like Trump. Trump to me is I'm at first I was looking, I said, this guy is a narcissistic billionaire and he's a socio-psychopath. And then I started listening to him and realized he's a ticked-off billionaire who loses. He knows he's going to lose big, and all his billionaire buddies are going to lose big because people are being run by incompetence. Like Obama is literally driving the American government and the American industry into the ground. And, of course, his mentor is George Soros and the same group of maniacs that set up World War I and World War II, which are all bankers. So what I see happening is the population is basically realizing, hey, get rid of our show. Cut off Genesis Network. 6 months from now, we'll be on an encrypted network, just like the tapes that were copied for the return of the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran, and they made very poor copies because they made copies of copies. But by the time the revolution happened, everybody knew that the Ayatollah was coming back from France. Well, the same thing is going to happen. We will have a peer-to-peer network in 6 months. We will have encrypted networks, which will be totally illegal. But they can make everything illegal. They can prosecute in the courts a ham sandwich if they want to. And they can make every activity illegal, which is what not only Stalin said and the early people in the Russian Revolution. It doesn't matter. They made so many things illegal now. For example, as a medical doctor, if I had a license in California and I recommend anything other than commando surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, conventional paint by numbers, I can not only lose my license but go to jail. I'm not interested in a license in a totalitarian medical system like this in America. People are going to start breaking the law and being civilly disobedient to everything the government tries to force down our throats. And that includes an economic system,
I like
which is why
that attitude, and I'm with you 100% on that.
And that's why I say even Bitcoin, if the Security and Exchange Commission come after Bitcoin, they just set up on a peer-to-peer network. Nobody's going to stop Bitcoin. The government damn well knows it. In fact, they don't want to set the example of someone evading their control, which is why they won't go after them, because they're terrified that once they set an example, everybody will pile on to the government and the control agencies of these secret government control freaks. So we're back, and we have Pete Fedek here, and sorry I ranted a bit, but I get a lot of emotion in this because I want what I see coming as early as this fall is the first, what I call really nasty birth pangs of a major geoclimatic and military disaster fronted by economic bad policies of idiots that are evil, like Obama. And by the way, this man, because he's evil, is puppeteered by George Soros and the other group. He is remarkably successful. He's not a failure. He is amazingly successful. This is probably the most successful president at destroying the constitutional basis of the America, our military, our economics, our foreign policy. Our enemies don't fear us, and our allies don't trust us. And the people are cheering. A lot of people think it's a race issue. If you say anything about Obama, you're against blacks. Well, I like someone like Dr. Ben Carson. He would be a great president. He's black, and he's a neurosurgeon. I think this bring out the race card now makes me ill in America. It makes me ill. So, G. Edward, tell us what you think about that thesis I just put forward. Again, it's a thesis. We don't know how it'll all play out, but we need to have a system that is not fractionally reserve currency run by the big banks that are not even American. I mean, the Fed Reserve, as Ron Paul tried for years, and Rand Paul's tried a bit to try to see if he can get an audit of the Fed, they don't want you to audit them because it's neither Fed nor Reserve. It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, I'm thinking that if we're going to do an analysis, if we're going to go and do the ivory tower thing, we have to play the devil's advocate occasionally and say, okay, let's challenge our own ideas and see if there's a weakness to it. And that's what I like to do if you have time. Sometimes you're in a hurry. You got to do something right away, and of course, usually
there's no rush. We're going to do this dialogue every Tuesday and Thursday. We'll continue because we have to have people to have smart people like Tommy that called in, who's a top attorney in Goldbug, who called in, who was interested in Bitcoin. We have Ted Anderson here at Genesis Network, who sells gold and silver, who sees in a gold economy as better than the idea of Bitcoin or fractional reserve currencies. Bitcoin can be hackable. I mean, Professor McKinney's proven that with a small laptop you can hack it. So,
yeah, well, that's the point that, as I was trying to make earlier, that sometimes what we think is true today turns out not to be true 10 years down the line. I was remembering, while you were talking, a conversation I had with Bernard von Nothaus. I think it must have been, maybe 15 years ago or whatever the date was, when the Internet was in its infancy. And Bernard, in case your listeners are not familiar with that name, was the creator of the Liberty Dollar. And it was a physical silver dollar that was represented by paper certificates, which were redeemable in silver. And it was going to be marketed largely through the Internet and everything. And I was all for it, and I still am, by the way. And one of the reasons I was for it, I suppose, is because it was an outgrowth of a proposal I had made in my own book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, toward the end. And he said, well, I read that, Ed, and he says, that sounded like a good idea, so I was going to just go do it. So that's how Bernard and I got together. But this is way back, and he was telling me, Ed, they'll never control the Internet. There's no way they can control the Internet. It's just absolutely beyond the reach of government and so forth. And I'm thinking, I wonder if that's true. Well, now we know that was not a very accurate statement. They do control the Internet, and they're working hard.
Well, they do it this time because the people are willing. If the government starts,
people are willing, and also they throw him in jail. Now, Bernard himself wound up in jail, and so he was not secure.
Well, they have to first off find you. They have to find you. If they can't find the servers and they can't find the individuals and they can't hack into the network, they can't locate who's even on it.
And that's the point. And so I'm just saying that they may not be able to control the technology, but they can control the people who use the technology. And that's what I'm thinking. We just have to be aware of. And the point of all of that, and the point of that devil's advocacy, if you want to call it that, is that as long as the corrupt system remains, the technology will help, but it won't save us. The system itself has got to be changed. And I think any conversation about what we should be doing for the future to make a better world for ourselves and our children and grandchildren, we've got to look at the system, not just the technology. And that's my only point.
I agree. I think that's an interesting point, but here's how I approach it. I approach it from what I call the dinosaur approach. We wait till the asteroid hits and the dinosaurs die. The asteroid is about to hit, and the meteor strikes. First off, I expect at least a 20 to 30% correction in world currencies this fall. All the experts I've listened to, and I check other reports, tell me there's going to be a major correction in world currencies hitting as early as this fall. This fall also, when we look at the commodities markets of rice and wheat, etc., there's massive shortages in food supplies worldwide. And as the currency crisis converges with the commodities crisis for foods, many nations aren't going to be able to buy food to feed their populations, and that feeds revolution. What's going to happen is the financial system itself, when it crosses the line where someone in a middle class in America can't get a six-pack of beer, buy a pizza, or put gas in their car, then people are going to flip out. And the government can't control us. And that's why they want to have Jade Helm still operational in the background here, because they want to have terror porn to pretend to make the idea that somehow they can do martial law on the population. And I know, working with Delta Force and Special Ops, because I was their doctor, the government has got a wet dream that they can do martial law. They can put men at a bank and they can close down the Internet temporarily, which we will create an encrypted network around it, which they can never stop. They can also try to put military troops in different places to try to terrorize the population. But if they start going house to house, if they start doing actual martial law in America, the forces that are involved in doing it, we will kill them so fast they won't know what happened. And just like Solzhenitsyn said about we burned in the Gulag archipelago, we will pounce on them in the stairwells and in the buildings. Anybody willing to take us? And Americans are not like people anywhere else on Earth. There's 94 million of us armed to the teeth. And every time Obama and the Justice Department try to seize our guns by one sneaky tactic or another, or buy billions more bullets, the more it pisses us off and determines that if they want a real good fight, we're not afraid to die. But they will not have enough of them to take on us. And the fact is that revolution is going to come to America. It's going to come as the currencies crash. And if they try to stop alternative currencies and bartering, whether it's somebody who's just selling 6 chickens for so much wheat or vegetables or pomegranates, they're not going to stop it. they're going to try to do whatever they can. They're going to try to jail and put us in civil detention camps or shoot us or send in special forces. It won't work. And they need to get a life of the fact. That's why Trump is such a phenomenon. He's a phenomenon because he's not just a narcissistic maniac. He's a release valve for the rage of the population against what a whole string of presidents have done, and Congresses have done, and global governments have done through transnational boardrooms that have screwed the populations of every nation on earth. And we've had enough. And I can tell you right now, it's just boiling under the surface. If all of a sudden they start seizing our money through a bail-in policy and people's bank accounts are frozen like Cyprus, you'll see Americans march on every capital of every state in this country, and we'll take over. That's what's going to happen.
Wow, Bill, I wish I could agree with what you were just saying, but intellectually I cannot. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I don't see it playing out quite that way.
We have to disconnect from the system. The system isn't going to go away because we elect the right person.
Yeah.
If we elect Rand Paul or even Trump, these people cannot disembowel the system that's so deeply entrenched in the Congress and Senate. The heaviest paid prostitutes in the country are not in Moscow or Beijing or whatever. They're in the District of Criminals. And these prostitutes are prostitutes for transnational corporations, which is why the passive Trans-Pacific Partnership or the DARK bill, the denial of right to know about GMO foods. So what I see happening is as people start disconnecting, because they will, they're disconnecting already with Bitcoin. They're disconnecting with buying gold and silver even. And your silver dollar you talked about, they need to disconnect with that. I don't tell people just do one thing. I'm going to have Ted Anderson and his brokers to tell people to buy gold and silver. But whether it's just starting to grow your own food or having even things you can barter with, creating, having your own still again, having things you can barter to other people when the economy crashes, because it's going to crash. There's nothing that the government can do to stop it from crashing. It's going to crash. And it's going to crash in spasms that are going to be extremely painful, and people aren't ready for it. And the government tries to pretend they're ready for it. They're not. They just want to have terror porn out there to terrify us. And guess what? It doesn't scare us anymore. And I am an example of a lot of people in America have had enough, and a lot of people around the world, whether they're Aussies, Kiwis, Europeans, they listen to this show everywhere. We're not going to take it anymore. Like the movie network, we're mad as hell. And we know the two things they have over our head, the Damocles sword, are media and money. And we have the way to pierce the deadly arrow of their system and destroy it. And we're not going to back down.